Lieutenant Zekthor stood in the cold metal chamber of his ship, watching Earth grow larger through the small window. The blue and green planet looked so peaceful from space. He had no idea why the Coalition wanted to know about this small world. His orders were simple. Go to their military school, watch how they train their soldiers, and report back about their fighting skills. The biomimicry machine hummed around him, changing his forearms into two, making his purple skin pink like the humans. His 3 eyes became 2 brown ones, and his tall frame shortened to match their height. The pain was sharp but quick. When it finished, he looked exactly like one of them. The computer gave him a new name and history. Alex Morrison, age 20, from a place called Ohio. Zekthor had studied human languages for months. English seemed simple enough compared to his own clicking speech. The hardest part would be acting like one of these primitive creatures who had not even left their own solar system yet. The shuttle dropped him near the United States Military Academy just before sunrise. The building looked old and plain compared to the crystal towers of his home world. Human technology was so basic that it almost made him laugh. These people still used metal and concrete when his people built with living crystal that could repair itself. Walking through the gates, Zekthor tried to copy how the other young humans moved. They seemed to walk with purpose but also talked and laughed with each other. On his world, soldiers never spoke unless given permission. The casual behavior here seemed wrong and undisciplined. A tall human with short gray hair and many-colored ribbons on his uniform approached him. "You must be Morrison. I'm Captain Ryan Foster. Welcome to West Point." Zekthor nodded, remembering to use human gestures. "Thank you, sir." Captain Foster smiled. "Drop your gear in the barracks and meet me in classroom 12 in 1 hour. We're starting with basic strategy today." The barracks surprised Zekthor. Instead of the individual cells he expected, humans shared large rooms with multiple beds. A young woman with dark hair was making her bed with perfect corners. She looked up and smiled. "You must be the new guy. I'm Lisa Martinez." She stuck out her hand. Zekthor stared at the hand for a moment before remembering this was how humans greeted each other. He shook it carefully. "Alex Morrison." "Cool. That's Jake Peterson over there." She pointed to a tall blonde human who waved from across the room. "And that's Danny Brooks." A shorter human with red hair nodded at him while polishing his boots. "We stick together here," Lisa said. "If you need anything, just ask. We've got your back." The phrase confused Zekthor. Why would anyone protect his back? In Coalition training, each soldier was responsible only for himself. Helping others was seen as weakness that could compromise the mission. In the classroom, Captain Foster stood before a large screen showing a battlefield map. "Today we'll discuss asymmetric warfare. Who can tell me what that means?" A female student raised her hand. "Fighting when you're outnumbered or have worse weapons, sir." "Exactly. And how do you win when the enemy is stronger?" "You change how you fight," said Jake Peterson. "Use their strength against them. Hit where they're weak. Run when they're strong." Zekthor felt confused. Coalition military doctrine taught that superior force always won. The stronger army with better weapons would naturally defeat the weaker one. This talk of changing tactics and using enemy strength as weakness made no sense. Captain Foster began showing examples from human history. A small group of farmers had defeated the mighty British Empire. Tiny Vietnam had fought the powerful United States to a standstill. Afghanistan had broken 3 different empires across centuries. The key, Foster explained, is adaptation. When conventional tactics fail, you innovate. When the enemy expects one thing, you do another. Flexibility wins. Wars, not just firepower. Zekthor's mind raced. The Coalition had won every war through superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never needed to adapt or change tactics. Their enemies were always weaker and less advanced. But these humans seemed to think differently about war itself. During the lunch break, Zekthor sat alone, trying to process what he had learned. Lisa Martinez sat down beside him with her food tray. "You look confused," she said. "Foster's class can be intense." Your people fight in strange ways, Zekthor said carefully. Lisa laughed. I guess we do, but that's how we survive. My grandfather fought in World War II. He used to say that Americans win because we don't fight fair. We fight smart. Fighting smart? Yeah. Like, if someone bigger than you wants to fight, you don't stand there and trade punches. You move around, tire them out, hit them where it hurts. Use your brain, not just your muscles. That afternoon, they had physical training. Zekthor expected to see the brutal conditioning used by coalition forces. Instead, the humans worked in teams, helping each other complete obstacles and challenges. When one student struggled with rope climbing, 3 others stayed to encourage and assist him. During a running exercise, Jake Peterson twisted his ankle. Instead of leaving him behind as coalition doctrine required, the entire group slowed down to help him finish. Captain Foster watched but said nothing, which told Zekthor this behavior was normal and accepted. Why do you help him? Zekthor asked Danny Brooks as they supported Jake between them. Danny looked at him strangely. Because he's one of us. We don't leave people behind. But it slows down the group, it makes the mission harder. So what? The mission isn't more important than Jake. This idea shocked Zekthor completely. In coalition training, the mission was everything. Individual soldiers were replaceable tools to achieve objectives. The idea that a person could be more valuable than success made no logical sense. That evening, Zekthor accessed his hidden communication device to send his first report to Coalition Command. He wrote about the humans' strange fighting theories and their inefficient team training. He mentioned their focus on adaptation and innovation, though he still didn't understand why these things mattered. But as he prepared for sleep, something bothered him. The humans he had met today were not the primitive savages described in coalition briefings. Lisa Martinez spoke 3 languages and could calculate complex mathematics in her head. Jake Peterson had designed improved training equipment in his spare time. Danny Brooks could memorize entire tactical manuals after reading them once. These were not simple minds. They were not weak or backward. They were different, and Zekthor was beginning to suspect that difference might be more dangerous than the coalition realized. Outside his window, he could see other students studying late into the night, working together on problems and helping each other understand difficult concepts. Their laughter and friendship seemed genuine, not the fearful respect he was used to among coalition soldiers. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zekthor wondered if his people had made a mistake about humans. Perhaps they were not as primitive as everyone believed. Perhaps they were something else entirely. 3 weeks had passed since Zekthor arrived at the academy, and every day brought new confusion. What he thought would be a simple observation mission was becoming something much more complicated. The humans continued to surprise him with ideas that challenged everything he believed about warfare and military life. Professor Karen Walsh stood at the front of the military history classroom, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had been a soldier herself before becoming a teacher, and her voice carried the authority of someone who had seen real combat. Today we're studying the Battle of Thermopylae, she announced. 300 Spartans held off thousands of Persian soldiers. Who can tell me how this was possible? A student raised his hand. They used the terrain, ma'am. The narrow pass meant the Persians couldn't use their numbers. Correct. But there's more to it than that. Professor Walsh clicked to the next slide. The Spartans understood something that many armies throughout history have forgotten. Sometimes, the best defense is making the enemy fight on your terms, not theirs. Zekthor listened carefully. Coalition forces always attacked with overwhelming numbers and superior technology. They never had to worry about terrain or fighting on enemy terms because their weapons could destroy anything from space. But these ancient humans had found ways to make strength meaningless through clever positioning and strategy. Now let's look at more recent examples, Professor Walsh continued. Vietnam, 1968, the Tet Offensive. American forces had better weapons, air support, and training, yet a smaller, less equipped force nearly won through superior knowledge of local conditions and unconventional tactics. The examples kept coming. Each one showed humans finding ways to win against stronger enemies through innovation and adaptation. Zekthor began to realize that his people's military history contained no such stories. Coalition forces had never faced an enemy that could outthink them. After class, Zekthor walked to the training grounds where Danny Brooks was leading a squad exercise. Danny had been chosen as squad leader not because he was the strongest or fastest, but because other students trusted his judgment. This was another human concept that puzzled Zekthor. Coalition leaders were selected purely by combat test scores and genetic markers. "All right, listen up," Danny called to his team. "We have a hostage situation. Building 12 has been taken by enemy forces. We need to get the civilians out without anyone getting hurt." The scenario seemed simple enough, but as Zekthor watched, he realized the humans were approaching it in ways no coalition force would consider. Instead of planning a direct assault, they spent long minutes discussing how to minimize risk to the hostages. Lisa Martinez suggested using the building's ventilation system to deploy smoke that would confuse the enemy without harming civilians. Jake Peterson, still limping slightly from his ankle injury, proposed creating a distraction at the front while the real rescue team entered from the roof. "What if we can't save everyone?" asked Amy Collins, a quiet student who rarely spoke during exercises. Danny looked at her seriously. "Then we find another way. We don't leave people behind and we don't accept losses we can prevent." This attitude troubled Zekthor deeply. Coalition tactical doctrine clearly stated that some casualties were acceptable if they achieved the mission objective. The idea of risking mission success to save individuals seemed not just inefficient, but dangerous. The exercise began, and Zekthor watched in amazement as the human students executed their plan. What should have been a simple room-clearing operation became an intricate dance of coordination and communication. Danny directed his team using hand signals that seemed to convey far more information than simple coalition battle language. When one part of the plan went wrong, the humans didn't panic or revert to basic protocols. Instead, they adapted in real time. Jake Peterson abandoned his assigned position to help Amy Collins when she encountered unexpected resistance. Lisa Martinez improvised a new route when her original path was blocked. Most shocking of all, when Amy Collins was wounded during the exercise, the entire team stopped their advance to ensure her safety. They risked mission failure to protect a single team member, just as they had done with Jake during physical training. Captain Foster observed from the sidelines, making notes, but not interfering. When the exercise ended successfully, he gathered the students for review. "Good work overall," he said. "But I noticed something. Peterson, you broke formation to help Collins. That wasn't part of the plan." Jake stood straighter. "She needed help, sir. I couldn't leave her." "And that decision could have compromised the entire mission." "Yes, sir, but it was the right thing to do." Captain Foster nodded slowly. "In this case, yes. But what if helping one person meant losing 10 others? These are the decisions real leaders face." That evening, Zekthor accessed the Academy's computer network to research human military history more deeply. What he found disturbed him even more than the classroom lessons. The humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years, constantly developing new tactics and strategies. The American Civil War had introduced new forms of total warfare and industrial military production. World War I had seen the development of combined arms tactics that the coalition was still using centuries later. World War II had produced innovations in intelligence gathering, code breaking, and strategic bombing that seemed incredibly advanced for such a primitive species. But it was the smaller conflicts that truly worried Zekthor. Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. Each war had shown humans adapting to new challenges and developing tactics that no coalition military academy taught. The humans didn't just learn from their victories, they studied their defeats and came back stronger. Late that night, Zekthor received a coded message from his handlers. Coalition intelligence wanted more detailed information about human weapons and defensive capabilities. They were particularly interested in Earth's nuclear arsenal and space defense systems. Reading the message, Zekthor felt something he had never experienced before. The Coalition's questions seemed less like intelligence gathering and more like preparation for attack. His mission was starting to feel less like observation and more like targeting. The next morning brought news that made Zekthor's blood run cold. During breakfast, Lisa Martinez mentioned that her brother was stationed at a military base that monitored space for incoming threats. "He says they've been tracking some weird signals lately," she said casually. "Probably just satellites or space junk, but Command is taking it seriously." Zekthor nearly choked on his food. The humans knew about coalition ships in their solar system. They were watching and preparing, even if they didn't fully understand what they were seeing. "Are you okay?" Amy Collins asked, noticing his reaction. "Fine," Zekthor managed, "just thinking about the test today." But he wasn't thinking about any test. He was thinking about the growing realization that his people might have seriously underestimated Earth. The humans weren't just primitive warriors. With crude weapons, they were strategic thinkers who had been preparing for threats they couldn't even fully identify yet. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zekthor wondered if the Coalition was making a terrible mistake. These humans were not the easy conquest his people expected. They were something far more dangerous, an enemy that could learn and adapt faster than anyone realized. 2 months into his mission, Zekthor could no longer ignore what he was seeing. Every day at the Academy brought new evidence that his people had completely misunderstood humanity. The primitive species was anything but primitive, and that realization was keeping him awake at night. The morning started like any other, but during combat simulation class, something happened that changed everything. The students were divided into 2 teams for a complex urban warfare exercise. Danny Brooks led one squad while Lisa Martinez commanded the other. The scenario involved capturing a strategic building while avoiding civilian casualties in a crowded city environment. Zekthor watched from the observation deck as both teams received their briefings. The exercise was designed to be nearly impossible. The attacking team had limited ammunition, no air support, and strict rules about collateral damage. Most coalition forces would have failed this mission or succeeded only by ignoring the civilian protection requirements. But these humans did something Zekthor had never seen before. Instead of following the tactical playbook they had been taught, they threw it away completely. Danny Brooks studied the battlefield for exactly 30 seconds, then turned to his team. "Forget everything we learned about urban assault. This isn't going to work with standard tactics." "What do you mean?" asked Jake Peterson. "Look at the setup. They want us to fail using normal methods, so we won't use normal methods." What happened next defied every principle of military science that Zekthor knew. Danny's team split into groups that were too small to be effective by coalition standards. They moved through the city in patterns that made no tactical sense. They used civilian buildings not as cover, but as part of their actual strategy. Instead of attacking the target building directly, they convinced the civilian actors to help them. They turned the urban population from an obstacle into an asset. Within minutes, they had created an intelligence network that told them exactly where the defenders were positioned. Lisa Martinez's defending team was equally innovative. When they realized the attackers weren't following standard patterns, they abandoned their prepared defensive positions and created new ones in real time. They turned the building itself into a weapon, using its structure to funnel attackers into carefully planned traps. The exercise ended with both teams achieving objectives that should have been impossible. The attacking team secured the building without a single civilian casualty. The defending team held their position while also evacuating non-combatants to safety. Captain Foster ended the simulation and called both teams together. "What you just did," he said slowly, "was completely outside standard military doctrine." The students looked nervous, thinking they had failed. "It was also brilliant," Foster continued. "You faced an impossible situation and created new solutions in real time. That's what separates good soldiers from great ones." After the exercise, Zekthor walked alone through the academy grounds, his mind racing. What he had witnessed was not just tactical innovation, it was strategic thinking that evolved during combat itself. His people's military computers would have needed hours to calculate the possibilities these humans had evaluated in seconds. That evening, He accessed his hidden communication system to review recent intelligence from Coalition Command. What he found made his hands shake. The files contained detailed plans for something called Operation Cleansing Dawn, a full-scale invasion of Earth scheduled to begin in 6 months. The operation assumed human resistance would collapse within days once faced with superior Coalition technology. The casualty estimates for human military forces ranged from 60 to 80%. But worse than the invasion plans were the surveillance, reports from other Coalition scouts. 3 other agents had been sent to Earth over the past year. All had stopped reporting. Official records listed them as communication failures, but Zekthor now suspected something else had happened to them. His hands trembling, he accessed deeper files that required his highest security clearance. What he found there made him feel sick. Earth had never been ignored by the Coalition. It had been actively monitored for decades. The Coalition knew about human technological development, their military capabilities, and their strategic thinking. The decision to invade wasn't based on ignorance. It was based on fear. The classified reports spoke of dangerous adaptive capabilities and unprecedented innovation under pressure. Human military exercises had been observed and studied. Coalition strategists were terrified not by human technology, but by human thinking. One report, written by a Coalition general, stated, "Humanity represents the first species we have encountered that improves during combat rather than degrading. Their tactical innovation increases under stress, making them exponentially more dangerous as conflicts continue. Immediate action is required before they develop space-based military capabilities." Zekthor sat in his small room, staring at the screen. His people weren't planning to conquer a primitive species. They were planning to destroy a potential rival before it could become a threat. The next morning, he could barely concentrate during classes. When Professor Walsh discussed the Korean War and how United Nations forces had adapted to Chinese intervention, all Zekthor could think about was how Coalition forces had never faced an enemy that forced them to adapt. His people won through superior numbers and technology, not strategic brilliance. During lunch, Lisa Martinez sat beside him as she had every day for weeks. "You look terrible, Alex. Are you sick?" "Just tired," he lied. "You've been acting strange lately. Is everything okay at home?" Zekthor looked at her concerned face. Lisa Martinez was training to be a military officer, but she was also studying engineering and spoke 4 languages. In any Coalition society, she would be considered a valuable resource to be protected and utilized. Here, she was just one of thousands of equally capable humans. "Lisa," he said carefully, "what would you do if Earth was attacked by beings from space?" She laughed. "Seriously? That's what's bothering you? Too many science fiction movies?" "Just imagine it was possible." Her expression became serious. "Well, I guess we'd fight back. Humans don't give up easily. We'd find a way to win, or at least make it cost them everything, even if they had better technology. Especially then, that just means we'd have to be smarter. Technology isn't everything, Alex. The best weapon is the one between your ears." That afternoon, Captain Foster pulled Zekthor aside after tactical analysis class. They walked to a quiet corner of the campus where no one else could hear them. "Alex," Foster said quietly, "we need to talk." Zekthor's heart stopped. Had they discovered his true identity? "I know you're not what you appear to be," Foster continued. "We've known since your first week here." "I don't understand what you mean, sir." Foster smiled sadly. "Son, I've been training soldiers for 20 years. I know when someone doesn't belong. Your fighting techniques are too advanced for someone with no formal training. Your tactical knowledge exceeds what any civilian should know. And you ask questions that suggest you're comparing our methods to something else." Zekthor remained silent, not sure how to respond. "The question is," Foster said, "what are you going to do with what you've learned here?" "What do you mean?" "You came here to study us, to understand how we fight and how we think. Now you know. So what happens next?" Captain Foster looked directly into Zekthor's eyes. "Whatever you are, wherever you come from, I hope you remember one thing. We're not just soldiers here. We're human beings who care about each other and fight to protect what we love. That makes us dangerous in ways your people probably don't understand." As Foster walked away, Zekthor realized that his mission had been discovered. But somehow, he hadn't been captured or exposed. The humans knew what he was and were letting him choose what to do next. For the first time in his life, Zekthor faced a decision that would define not just his future, but the future of two entire species. That night, Zekthor sat alone in his room, staring at the communication device that connected him to Coalition Command. In 3 hours, he was supposed to send his final intelligence report about human military capabilities. Everything he had learned would help his people plan the invasion that would destroy Earth's defenses and kill millions of humans. But the humans he had come to know were not the primitive savages described in coalition briefings. Lisa Martinez, who helped struggling classmates with their studies. Danny Brooks, who risked mission failure to save a wounded teammate. Jake Peterson, who designed better training equipment in his spare time. Amy Collins, who quietly supported everyone around her. These were not monsters who deserved destruction. They were people who had shown him kindness when they thought he was just another student. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Alex, it's Lisa. Can I come in?" Zekthor quickly hid the communication device. "The door is open." Lisa entered carrying 2 cups of coffee and a plate of cookies her mother had sent from home. She sat on the chair across from his bed and studied his face with concern. "You've been acting really strange lately. Everyone's noticed. We're worried about you." "I am fine," Zekthor said, though his voice sounded hollow even to himself. "No, you're not. You look like someone told you the world was ending." She paused. "Alex, whatever is bothering you, you can talk to us. We're your friends." The word friends hit Zekthor like a physical blow. In coalition society, soldiers had comrades and superiors, but never friends. The concept of people caring about each other without official duty or genetic relation was foreign to his culture. Yet these humans had welcomed him, helped him, and worried about his well-being simply because they considered him part of their group. "Lisa," he said slowly, "if you discovered that someone you trusted was lying to you about who they really were, what would you do?" She thought for a moment. "I guess it would depend on why they were lying. If they were trying to hurt people, that would be different than if they were just scared or protecting themselves. And if their lies might cause terrible things to happen, then I'd hope they would find the courage to tell the truth even if it was difficult." After Lisa left, Zekthor made his decision. Instead of sending his intelligence report to Coalition Command, he accessed the Academy's secure communication system. Using his advanced knowledge of Coalition encryption methods, he sent a message directly to the highest levels of Earth's military command. The message was simple. "Invasion fleet approaching. 6 months until arrival. This is not a drill. Prepare for war." Along with the warning, he transmitted detailed specifications of coalition ships, weapons, and tactical doctrines. Everything his people had planned to use against Earth was now in human hands. 3 days later, Captain Foster called him to a private meeting in a secure conference room. When Zekthor arrived, he found Foster sitting with 2 other people he didn't recognize, a woman in an expensive suit and a man wearing the uniform of a high-ranking general. "Alex," Foster said, "I'd like you to meet Director Sarah Chen from the Department of Defense and General Robert Martinez." Zekthor's eyes widened. "Martinez, are you related to Lisa?" The general smiled. "She's my daughter, and she speaks very highly of you." Director Chen leaned forward. "We received your message. We know who you are, Lieutenant Zekthor of the Coalition Defense Forces. We also know you've chosen to help us instead of your own people." "How long have you known?" Zekthor asked. "Since the day you arrived," General Martinez replied. "We've been monitoring coalition activity in our solar system for over a decade. When we detected your ship, we were ready. But you let me stay. You let me learn about your military. Because we wanted you to see who we really are," Director Chen explained. "We hoped that if you understood humanity, you might choose to help us rather than destroy us." Captain Foster nodded. Everything you experienced here was real, son. The friendships, the training, the innovations you witnessed. That's genuinely who we are. We didn't put on a show for you. We just let you see the truth. Over the following weeks, Zekthor worked closely with human military planners to prepare Earth's defenses. His inside knowledge of coalition technology and tactics proved invaluable, but what impressed him most was how quickly the humans adapted his information to create defensive strategies. They didn't just copy coalition methods or try to build identical weapons. Instead, they used their understanding of coalition weaknesses to develop entirely new approaches to space combat. Within a month, human engineers had designed defensive systems that exploited flaws in coalition armor that even Zekthor hadn't known existed. The human response to the invasion threat revealed everything Zekthor had learned about their character. Instead of panicking or fighting among themselves, they united. Nations that had been enemies for decades began sharing technology and resources. The entire planet mobilized not for conquest, but for survival. Lisa Martinez was reassigned to a special project developing communication systems that could coordinate global defenses. When she learned the truth about Alex's identity, her reaction surprised him. "I'm not angry that you lied," she said. "I'm proud that you chose to do the right thing." "I betrayed my own people," Zekthor replied. "No, you saved both our peoples. Because if the coalition had attacked without warning, we would have fought back with everything we had. The war would have lasted years and cost millions of lives on both sides. Now maybe we can end it before it starts." When the coalition invasion fleet arrived 6 months later, they found Earth ready for them. The humans had transformed asteroids into weapons platforms, developed new shield technologies that could deflect coalition energy weapons, and created a coordinated defense network that spanned the entire solar system. But more importantly, they had prepared a message for the coalition commanders. It was broadcast on all frequencies as soon as the fleet entered Earth's space. "We know why you came," the message said. "We know you fear us, but we are not your enemies. We offer you a choice. Retreat now and open diplomatic relations, or face a war that will cost both our civilizations everything." The coalition fleet, expecting to face primitive humans with crude weapons, instead encountered defenses that seemed impossible. Earth's protective systems were not just advanced, they were innovative in ways coalition tacticians had never considered. After 3 days of tense standoff, Coalition Command agreed to negotiations. The war that should have destroyed Earth instead became the beginning of a new relationship between species. Years later, Zekthor served as an instructor at the same academy where he had once been a spy. Now he taught coalition and human officers together, sharing knowledge that had once been classified secrets. The classroom where he had first learned about human military history now hosted students from a dozen different worlds. Lisa Martinez, now a colonel, often visited his classes to speak about interspecies cooperation. Danny Brooks commanded a joint human coalition exploration vessel. Jake Peterson ran an engineering program that combined technologies from both civilizations. During quiet moments, Zekthor sometimes wondered what would have happened if he had followed his original orders. The coalition would have won their war, but they would have destroyed something irreplaceable, a species that could teach them new ways to think about conflict, cooperation, and what it meant to be truly strong. Standing before his mixed class of human and alien students, Zekthor realized that his greatest victory had not been preventing a war. It had been helping two civilizations learn that their differences made them stronger together than either could be alone.